would be much busier. Judging from all the videos and movies, Vegas is just crazy and there's party everywhere, and then we arrived here and it was like that city, so.
The glittering lights of Las Vegas are dimming in a way nobody expected. Sin City, once the ultimate playground, where tourists gleefully empty their wallets, is experiencing a crisis that's sending shockwaves through the entire hospitality industry. Casino workers, hotel staff, and entertainers are watching in disbelief as visitors walk through the doors with tighter grips on their money than ever before. The transformation is stunning and alarming at the same time.
Not only with the tourism, but with the pricing.
Alfredo De La Torre runs 2 restaurants in Las Vegas. He says customers are experiencing sticker shock.
What used to be a city where people threw caution to the wind is now a place where tourists count every single dollar. The workers who depend on tips and commissions are feeling the squeeze like never before. Something fundamental has shifted in the relationship between Las Vegas and its visitors. The question everyone is asking is simple but terrifying. What's really going on?
People believe at least part of the downturn can be tied to higher prices, especially right there on Las Vegas Boulevard. But is that really the case?
The signs of trouble are everywhere you look on the strip. Cocktail waitresses who once earned hundreds of dollars per shift in tips are now lucky to make $50 on a busy night. Dealers at blackjack tables watch players bet the minimum and leave after just a few hands instead of settling in for hours like they used to do. Restaurant servers are seeing smaller checks and even smaller gratuities despite providing the same level of service they always have. Valet attendants are parking fewer luxury cars and watching more tourists opt for rideshare services or simply walk. The energy that once defined Las Vegas, that electric feeling of money changing hands, has noticeably dimmed. Tour operators are slashing prices just to fill their buses with people who won't spend money once they arrive at destinations. Showrooms that used to sell out weeks in advance now have empty seats scattered throughout the audience. The mathematical reality is devastating. Less spending means less income for the thousands of workers who keep the city running.
But 8 News Now reporter James Schaefer shows us which Valley casinos have weathered the storm by betting big on the suburbs.
Sonia Owens, a veteran blackjack dealer with 15 years of experience at a major strip casino, speaks with barely controlled frustration about what he's witnessing. He remembers when players would casually bet $25 or $50 per hand without thinking twice about it. Now he sees players nervously placing $5 or $10 bets and visibly sweating every loss, no matter how small. The change happened gradually at first, then suddenly accelerated over the past 18 months in ways that shocked even the most experienced casino workers. Marcus says players used to laugh off their losses, order another drink, and keep playing because the entertainment value was worth it to them. Today, those same players look genuinely distressed when they lose even modest amounts and quickly leave the table with grim expressions. The psychology has completely reversed from carefree enjoyment to anxious penny pinching that sucks all the fun out of the experience. Marcus has seen grown men nearly cry over losing $100 at his table recently. The emotional shift is as dramatic as the financial one, and is making everyone uncomfortable.
The second quarter was an exceptional one for the company by every measure. Our Las Vegas operations delivered its highest quarterly net revenue and adjusted EBITDA in our 49-year history.
The reasons behind this dramatic change are complex and interconnected in ways that reveal deeper problems in American society. Workers throughout Las Vegas point to the crushing weight of inflation that has made everyday life exponentially more expensive for average people. Groceries cost 40% more than they did 3 years ago, forcing families to make impossible choices between necessities. Rent has skyrocketed in cities across America, with many people now spending more than half their income just to keep a roof over their heads. Gas prices remain stubbornly high despite occasional dips, making even the drive to Las Vegas a financial calculation rather than an easy decision. Healthcare costs continue their relentless climb, leaving millions of Americans one medical emergency away from bankruptcy. Student loan payments have resumed after years of pandemic forbearance, draining hundreds of dollars monthly from budgets that were already stretched thin. Credit card debt has reached record levels as people borrow just to maintain their previous standard of living. The vacation budget that used to be discretionary spending has become an unaffordable luxury for the majority of American households.
James Schaefer shows us which Valley casinos have weathered the storm by betting big on the suburbs.
Brian, Red Rock Resorts reported during their Q2 earnings call in their 49-year history, it was a net revenue best.
Jacob Soto, a cocktail server at the downtown casino, describes the change she's observed with raw emotion in her voice. She's been serving drinks to gamblers for 12 years and knows intimately how customer behavior reflects broader economic condition. Sarah used to receive $20 tips regularly from players who were winning or even from those who were losing but feeling generous. Now she's grateful when someone leaves her $5. And many players wave her away entirely to avoid tipping at all. The pretense of wealth and abundance that used to define Las Vegas visitors has evaporated into uncomfortable reality. Sarah sees families who clearly saved for months to afford this trip, rationing every single expense down to the dollar. Children beg their parents for souvenirs or snacks only to be told no repeatedly in voices tinged with guilt and frustration. Couples have quiet arguments about whether they can afford to see a show or should just gamble with their limited entertainment budget. The joy that should accompany a Las Vegas vacation has been replaced by stress and anxiety that follows people from their regular lives. Sarah says she feels guilty accepting tips from people who clearly can't afford them but desperately need her income as well.
Robust visitation and strong spend per visit, coupled with a strong table games business, help drive the highest revenue and profitability in our gaming segment in the company's history.
The hotels and casinos are responding to these changes in ways that make the situation worse for workers and tourists alike. Resort fees have increased to $45 or $50 per night at many properties, adding hundreds of dollars to vacation costs that aren't included in advertised room rates. Parking fees that didn't exist 5 years ago now cost up to $25 per day at strip properties. Food prices in casino restaurants have surged to levels that make even airport dining seem reasonable by comparison. A basic breakfast can easily cost $40 per person when you include a tip and beverage. Pool access sometimes requires cabana rentals that start at $300 for a few hours of shade. Show tickets have climbed to price points where nosebleed seats cost what premium seats used to, and good seats require you to spend several $100s per person. Even the free drinks that casinos offer to gamblers have become conditional on betting minimums that many tourists can't sustain. The nickel and diming has transformed Las Vegas from an affordable escape into a luxury destination that's priced out its traditional customer base.
Now, Red Rock Casino says it's also your new neighbors contributing to the change as home construction continues on Summerlin West, Cadence, and Inspirada. Those new residents directly linked to the nearly 10% growth this year alone.
Charlie Mungo, who manages a gift shop on the Strip, provides a retail perspective that confirms a broader spending decline. His store used to do brisk business selling Las Vegas-themed merchandise, snacks, and souvenirs to tourists eager for mementos of their trip. Now, people walk through, browse extensively, take photos of items they like, then leave without purchasing anything at all. David has watched his daily sales drop by 60% over the past 2 years, despite foot traffic remaining relatively steady. The disconnect between visitors and spending is startling and depressing for someone whose livelihood depends on tourist dollars. He's tried sales, promotions, and price cuts, but nothing seems to motivate people to open their wallets. Families will spend 20 minutes in his store, let their kids pick out toys or t-shirts, then put everything back and leave when they see the total at the register. David understands they're making difficult choices between his souvenirs and their grocery bills back home. The guilt he feels is irrational but real. He's just trying to make a living, but so are his customers. Nobody wins in this economy except the corporations at the very top.
How are the locals casinos doing? Because their market is already here.
Everybody here is so friendly, and today we're on a day date, so kids are in school. This is perfect time for us to go out.
The entertainment industry in Las Vegas is suffering particularly acute pain from the spending slowdown. Magicians, comedians, musicians, and acrobats who make their living performing in showrooms are seeing audience sizes shrink month after month. Ticket sales for mid-tier shows have collapsed as tourists decide they can't justify spending $100 per person for entertainment. Street performers on Fremont Street report that tourists will stop, watch, take videos, then walk away without leaving a single dollar in the tip bucket. The unspoken contract between performers and audiences, you entertain us, we compensate you, has broken down completely. Tribute bands that used to pack small venues now play to rooms that are 3/4 empty on weekend nights. Magic shows that relied on walk-up ticket sales now depend entirely on advanced bookings that come through discount websites at fraction of face value. Comedy clubs have resorted to aggressive drink minimums just to generate revenue from audiences who won't spend on tickets. The creative economy that makes Las Vegas unique and vibrant is withering because tourists view entertainment as an unnecessary expense rather than the core purpose of their visit.
Through the summer slump, we know that a lot of the resorts on the Strip and the hotels downtown have been suffering because of the lower visitor numbers.
Restaurant workers throughout the city tell stories that range from heartbreaking to infuriating about the current state of dining in Las Vegas. Servers describe tourists who order only appetizers to share, skip drinks entirely except for water, then leave 10% tips or less. Host stands that used to have hour-long waits now seat people immediately because reservations are down across the board. High-end steakhouses are offering value menus and early bird specials that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. Buffets, once the signature Las Vegas dining experience, are closing permanently because tourists won't pay $35 or $40 per person anymore. Food courts in casino malls have replaced upscale dining options because fast food is all that moves inventory. Line cooks are being laid off as restaurants reduce their operating hours and shrink their menus to cut costs. Bartenders who specialize in craft cocktails now spend most of their time pouring domestic beer because nobody orders the $20 signature drinks. The entire dining ecosystem has downshifted from indulgence to survival mode in ways that diminish everyone's experience and income.
Like, I've grown up here in this movie theater. I always come to this movie theater, so it's always nostalgic and feels safe and fun.
Well, you can go bowling, there's an arcade, places to eat, watch movies, so a lot of things for us to do.
Transportation workers add another dimension to the economic picture that's emerging across Las Vegas. Taxi drivers report that tourists increasingly choose the cheapest rideshare options over cabs, then don't tip the drivers at all. Shuttle bus operators see people crowding onto free transportation rather than paying $15 for direct service to their hotels. Monorail ridership has plummeted because even the modest fare seems too expensive when walking is free, despite the 100-degree heat. Rental car companies are cutting their fleets because tourists are renting vehicles for fewer days and driving less overall. Limousine services that specialized in bachelor parties and group celebrations are closing down or pivoting to airport transportation just to stay afloat. The legendary Vegas club crawls, where groups hired party buses to hit multiple venues in one night, have largely disappeared. Parking lot attendants at casinos report that cars are staying parked longer as tourists venture out less frequently. Every segment of the transportation industry is feeling the squeeze as visitors try to minimize every expense they can possibly avoid.
A North Las Vegas casino that's been around for decades is preparing to close its doors. The Poker Palace first opened back in 1974 with just one bar, one blackjack table, and 8 slot machines squeezed into a space the size of a studio apartment.
The human cost of this economic transformation extends far beyond lost income for workers and reduced profits for businesses. Families who depended on dual incomes from casino jobs are struggling to pay rent when one spouse's tips have dropped by 70%. Single mothers working as housekeepers are taking on second and third jobs just to maintain the lifestyle they had 2 years ago. Young workers who moved to Las Vegas for opportunity are leaving the city because they can't afford to stay. Mental health issues are surging among service workers who feel the stress of financial instability every single day. Marriages are crumbling under the pressure of money problems that stem from circumstances beyond anyone's control. Children are absorbing their parents' anxiety about bills, future plans, and whether they'll need to move again. The social fabric that held Las Vegas together as a community of service workers is fraying at the edges. People who love this city and chose to build their lives here are questioning whether they made a terrible mistake.
Over the years, the property grew into a 25,000 square foot casino. Now, after more than 50 years in the community, it is being sold.
Behind all these personal stories lies a fundamental economic reality that transcends Las Vegas and touches every corner of America. The middle class is disappearing as wealth concentrates at the very top, while everyone else falls behind inflation and rising costs. Wages have stagnated for decades, even as productivity has increased, meaning workers generate more value but capture less of it. The billionaire class has doubled their wealth during the same period that average Americans have seen their savings evaporate. Political leaders on both sides have failed to address the structural issues driving inequality and economic insecurity. Corporate profits have reached all-time highs while workers' share of GDP has hit all-time lows. Tax policies favor capital over labor, rewarding investment income while penalizing earned income from actual work. Housing has transformed from a basic need into a speculative asset class that prices out regular people. Healthcare operates as a for-profit industry that extracts maximum revenue rather than delivering maximum health. The system is fundamentally broken in ways that make Las Vegas spending patterns a symptom rather than the disease itself.
Coverage continues now. Mass deportations of undocumented workers and workplace raids at Las Vegas casinos appear unlikely.
Casino executives and corporate leadership are responding to the crisis in predictable ways that prioritize shareholders over workers and communities. They're implementing labor cuts that reduce staffing to skeleton crews even during busy periods, making remaining workers do more with less. Automation is replacing human dealers, servers, and clerks wherever technology makes it possible, eliminating jobs permanently. They're pushing customers toward slot machines and electronic gaming because those require minimal staff to operate. Marketing budgets are being redirected toward high rollers and wealthy international tourists who still spend freely rather than middle-class Americans who don't. Loyalty programs are being restructured to require higher spending thresholds before customers earn meaningful rewards or perks. Corporate consolidation continues as larger companies buy struggling competitors and strip them for parts. Stock buybacks and dividend payments continue unabated even as workers struggle to survive on reduced income. The disconnect between executive compensation and worker welfare has never been more stark or more morally indefensible.
That feels really unusual. Who on earth ever heard of spending $600 or $700 a night for a hotel room in Las Vegas? That was ridiculous. Well, that was before there was Bellagio and Palazzo and Aria and others.
International tourists, particularly from China and other Asian markets, represented a potential lifeline that hasn't materialized as expected. Travel restrictions, geopolitical tensions, and economic slowdowns in key markets have reduced international arrivals significantly. The wealthy Chinese tourists who once descended on Las Vegas in large groups spending extravagantly have largely stopped coming. Currency fluctuations make American vacations more expensive for international visitors, even when they can afford the base costs. Cultural shifts in destination preferences mean younger international travelers are choosing other cities over Las Vegas. The visa process and travel logistics create friction that makes spontaneous visits difficult for foreign tourists. Even when international visitors do come, many are budget conscious and spend less per capita than they did previously. The European market has softened as economic uncertainty spreads across the continent and affects discretionary spending. The hoped-for international rescue of Las Vegas hasn't happened and won't happen anytime soon based on current trends.
Look, what the fear is that this riling up the economy, this idea of mass deportations, mass tariffs, would bring on a slowdown.
Workers are banding together in unions and advocacy groups to demand better wages and working conditions in response to the crisis. The culinary union has become increasingly vocal about the need for contracts that guarantee living wages and benefits. Organizing efforts are spreading to previously non-union segments of the workforce as people recognize collective action as their only leverage. Strike threats and work stoppages are becoming more common as workers push back against corporate cost-cutting measures. Public sympathy for workers has increased as people recognize the essential role they play in the Las Vegas economy. Social media has amplified worker voices and stories, creating pressure on companies to treat employees better. Political candidates are being forced to take positions on labor issues and demonstrate support for working families. The power dynamics are slowly shifting as workers realize they have more leverage than they thought in the tight labor market. Still, progress is frustratingly slow when bills are due now, and change takes months or years to achieve.
In our industry, on the Las Vegas Strip, it's not an issue.
Why not?
Well, it's heavily regulated. Most industries are not regulated like gaming.
The psychological impact on tourists themselves shouldn't be overlooked in understanding why spending has collapsed in Las Vegas. People feel guilty about spending money on entertainment when they're behind on credit card payments or struggling with debt. The fear of unexpected expenses, medical bills, car repairs, job loss makes people hoard cash rather than spend it freely. Social media creates constant comparison anxiety as people see others appearing to live better lives than they can afford. Financial literacy has actually increased as more people track their spending and understand their true financial situation. The delayed gratification mindset that helped people save for vacations has extended into the vacation itself as habits persist. Mental accounting makes people view vacation money and regular money as the same pool of resources rather than separate categories. The hangover from pandemic-era spending and debt accumulation has created a correction where people are now overcorrecting. Fundamentally, Americans no longer trust the economic system to protect them, so they're protecting themselves by spending less everywhere.
So who stands to feel the most pain when the visitor numbers decline? Obviously, people in the hospitality industry, but it goes much deeper than that.
The impact on Las Vegas extends beyond the Strip into neighborhoods and communities throughout the metropolitan area. Local businesses that depend on tourism dollars indirectly are suffering, as workers have less money to spend in their own city. Housing prices are finally starting to moderate as people leave Las Vegas and demand decreases slightly. Schools are dealing with increased student turnover as families relocate for better opportunities elsewhere. Non-profit organizations report surging demand for food assistance, rent help, and other emergency services from newly struggling families. Crime rates are ticking upward in some areas as economic desperation pushes people toward illegal activities. Municipal budgets are getting squeezed as tax revenues decline and social service needs increase simultaneously. The optimism and growth mentality that defined Las Vegas for decades has given way to uncertainty and anxiety. People are questioning whether the boom times will ever return or if this diminished state represents the new normal.
I'm worried. Like, what are we going into? What's going to happen?
Some business owners and industry veterans argue that Las Vegas needs to fundamentally reinvent itself rather than simply wait for spending to return. They suggest moving away from the mass market tourist model toward more sustainable, experience-based offerings that provide value. Others advocate for diversifying the economy beyond gaming and tourism to reduce vulnerability to consumer spending cycles. Technology companies and data centers represent potential growth sectors that could provide high-wage jobs outside the casino industry. Some envision Las Vegas as a convention and business travel destination rather than primarily a leisure market. Entertainment could shift toward more affordable, inclusive experiences rather than expensive shows accessible only to wealthy visitors. Local officials discuss investing in public amenities and cultural institutions that serve residents rather than only tourists. The National Hockey League team has demonstrated that Las Vegas can support professional sports beyond just hosting other cities' teams. Change is possible, but it requires vision, investment, and willingness to move beyond the traditional casino resort model that's defined the city.
You know, and this is the time I'm worried.
The data tells a story that numbers alone can fully capture, but that workers live every single day. Room occupancy rates remain relatively high, but revenue per available room has declined as people book cheaper accommodations. Gaming revenue is flat or down across most properties, despite inflation that should push numbers higher. Food and beverage spending per visitor has dropped by 20 to 25% compared to pre-pandemic levels. Show attendance is down even when controlling for the number of available seats and performance schedules. Retail sales in casino shopping areas have fallen off a cliff as luxury brands struggle to justify their presence. Pool and spa revenues have decreased as tourists skip premium amenities they consider non-essential. Even wedding and special event bookings have softened as couples choose cheaper venues or smaller celebrations. Every metric that matters to workers, tips, commissions, hours worked points, in the same discouraging direction. The math is simple and brutal. Less spending means less money for the people who make Las Vegas function.
All of the hotels, not just the big ones, all of them are trying to manage that inventory as best they can.
Personal stories bring the statistics to life in ways that raw numbers never could, and that demand emotional recognition. Jennifer Williams, a cocktail waitress at a major strip casino, describes working a 12-hour shift on a Saturday night and taking home only $85 in tips. She used to average $300 for the same shift just 2 years ago when tourists were generous and grateful for service. Now she watches players wave her away or pretend not to see her when she approaches with drinks. The humiliation of being invisible to people she's trying to serve adds insult to the financial injury of poverty wages. Jennifer has 2 children and can't make ends meet even working 6 days per week at a job that's destroying her body. Her feet ache constantly, her back throbs with pain, and she's developed anxiety about money that keeps her awake at night. She's considering leaving Las Vegas entirely and moving somewhere with a lower cost of living and more economic opportunity. The dream that brought her to the city has turned into a nightmare she can't escape.
I was very concerned because it's slow. When I drive down the strip going to work in the morning and I barely see visitors out there.
Miguel Rodriguez, a valet attendant at a resort casino, shares similar frustrations about the changing dynamics he observes daily. He used to park high-end vehicles and receive $5 or $10 tips from guests who appreciated the convenience. Now he parks economy cars and receives $2 or nothing at all from tourists who seem almost resentful of the service. Miguel has worked at the same property for 8 years and has never seen morale this low among his coworkers. 3 of his fellow valets have quit in the past month alone to find different work or leave the city entirely. The ones who remain are bitter, demoralized, and increasingly angry about their deteriorating circumstances. Miguel loves Las Vegas and wants to stay, but he's running the numbers and realizing he might not have a choice. His rent has increased by $400 per month over the past 2 years while his income has fallen. The math doesn't work anymore, and no amount of optimism or hard work can change that fundamental reality. He feels betrayed by a city and the industry that promised opportunity but delivered only struggle.
So do you think that people who would ordinarily come here for the weekend right now are just a little uneasy about leaving California?
The generational aspect of this crisis adds another layer of complexity and concern for the future of Las Vegas. Older workers who remember the boom times are holding onto their jobs desperately because they have few other options at their age. Younger workers are avoiding the casino industry entirely because they can see it's not a path to financial security anymore. The skilled, experienced workforce that made Las Vegas service legendary is retiring or leaving without adequate replacement coming up behind them. Training programs and hospitality schools are seeing decreased enrollment as young people choose other career paths. The institutional knowledge and service culture that took decades to build could disappear within a generation if current trends continue. Casino properties are struggling to hire qualified workers even at entry-level positions because the reputation of the industry has deteriorated. The pipeline of talent that sustained Las Vegas through multiple economic cycles is drying up completely. Without workers, the entire ecosystem collapses, no matter how many tourists technically visit the city.
This summer, Las Vegas encountered new tourism challenges, translating into lower than average visitation and revenue.
Looking toward the future, several scenarios could play out, none of them particularly optimistic under current conditions. Best case, wages increase dramatically across the economy, inflation stabilizes, and tourists return to spending levels that sustain workers adequately. More likely, Las Vegas continues its slow decline as a middle-class destination and transforms into an exclusively luxury market. Worst case, climate change makes the region increasingly unlivable. Water supplies become critical, and the entire city faces existential crisis. Technology could replace most human workers, making the whole question of tourist spending moot for employment purposes. Economic inequality could worsen to the point where only the top 5 or 10% can afford leisure travel at all. Political instability and social unrest might make large gatherings in public spaces feel dangerous rather than fun. The optimism that built Las Vegas assumed perpetual growth and expanding prosperity that no longer seemed realistic. Whatever happens, the workers who depend on the city for their livelihoods deserve honest acknowledgement of the challenges they face.
In the exact same room, that is $500 one night is $200 the next. So those numbers move around a lot.
The federal and state governments have roles to play in addressing the crisis, but so far have mostly failed to act meaningfully. Minimum wage increases haven't kept pace with inflation, leaving workers further behind each year despite nominal raises. Tax policies continue to favor corporations and wealthy individuals rather than working families who need relief most desperately. Labor protections have been weakened over decades, making it harder for workers to organize and bargain collectively. Healthcare remains tied to employment in ways that make workers vulnerable and reduce their bargaining power. Student debt forgiveness has been blocked or limited, keeping young workers burdened with payments that prevent spending elsewhere. Housing policy has encouraged speculation and investment rather than affordable homeownership for regular people. Infrastructure investment in Las Vegas has lagged behind growth, creating quality of life issues that make the city less attractive. Political will to address these structural problems appears absent as elected officials prioritize donors over constituents. Without government intervention, market forces alone won't solve problems that market forces created.
So what makes casinos different than pretty much every other business in our company? It comes down to one word, really.
The story of tourists refusing to spend money in Las Vegas is ultimately a story about America's broken economic system. It's about inequality that has reached levels not seen since the Gilded Age and threatens social stability. It's about corporations that prioritize profits over people and view workers as expenses to minimize rather than partners to value. It's about political leaders who serve donors and special interests rather than the constituents who elected them. It's about an economic model that generates tremendous wealth but distributes it so unequally that most people are worse off. It's about the death of the American dream for millions of families who did everything right but still fell behind. The workers of Las Vegas are canaries in the coal mine, warning us that something is fundamentally wrong with how our society operates. Their struggle is everyone's struggle, and their fate is tied to the fate of working people everywhere. We can choose to address these problems honestly and make necessary changes, or we can watch inequality and economic insecurity tear our society apart. The choice is ours, but time is running out to make it.